Hey, what's up, everybody? Marcos Villegas here in self-quarantine, being joined with Holly Little Bear Lawson. And this is going to be something a little different. I've discussed
I'm
this,
already laughing. This is
yeah,
already funny.
with Holly on Twitter. And, she brings up and has been bringing up some very valid points on people dating in general. But I've been curious about this myself, so I had to bring in Holly, the Bumble expert, and
I
also one
resent that.
time,
I both resent and am amused by the fact that
yes.
I'm the expert. Also, we might be in deep water if I'm the expert.
But also one time, not one time, but pro fighter as well, both in boxing and MMA. Holly, this is
Yeah.
the burning question that I myself has had as a single person.
I'm
Dude,
single. I don't know that I'm the one to ask this, but go on.
well, how is one supposed to date during all this craziness?
Uh,
Give me your
it's
thoughts as a
well. I
woman.
mean, so I've been reading all of the think pieces because I have time like the rest of us to read like dating in the time of quarantine and love in the time of quarantine, which is the take on love in the time of cholera, right? Which is one of the best books ever. But and then I have friends who are currently dating, so we've all been bantering about it.
All right.
And
I want to hear this. All right.
well, obviously you're not going to meet anyone in person. Although I met somebody at a grocery store.
Okay.
I've never met anyone at a grocery store
Six,
ever.
6 feet away
Yeah, he was in front of me in the line.
with the
It was a
mask?
whole thing. No, this was
No.
like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, so apparently everyone, like the dating apps are super bountiful right now.
Oh, well, yeah, everybody's home.
Everyone's home and bored and engaged and wanting interaction. And then I think people want human interaction. So there's a lot of people who are by themselves, right? Who are literally just alone. So they have time. And at a certain point, you just need some kind of stimuli. You need some kind of back and forth. And there's only so many times you can FaceTime your friends and talk about whatever you talk about with your friends. And then if you're single and you're interested in that, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think the longer this goes on, we'll see kind of how people really adhere to the quarantine thing. Because I think at a certain point, the physicality of it is gonna kick in. Like I definitely know one of my close friends that I was talking to who was single, and she said she went on a date. And I was like, how did you go on a date? And she was like, oh, we went to a farmer's market. This is before the farmer's market got shut down. So you can kind of blame her for being one of the people that got the farmer's markets shut down. And I guess they went for a hike or something at the time they could hike. So she met him on an app, and they went to the farmer's market on a date, and then they went on a hike, and that was that. It just seems strange because you can't have any physical interaction, which maybe is good. I mean, maybe it's going to force people to converse and, get to know each other.
So
I
you,
don't know.
as a female, then how are you approaching this whole quarantine? Like, are you open to having someone come visit you at home to chill during quarantine? No, that's a big no-no.
I don't know you. I don't know where you've been. I don't know what your house is like. I don't know who's been to your house. I don't know where you stopped in the way. I don't know. I mean, this is me, but I'm also, I'm pretty strict with what I'm doing. So I have a niece that I go to see whose mom is a nurse. So I go between my place and I go to see her, and I spend a lot of time with her. But other than that, I'm not really going anywhere. So I'm trying to really adhere to it. And, I don't want to make anyone else sick, and I don't know. I don't trust people, and men will lie to get what they want. So I think it's going to be really interesting, like a month from now, 2 months from now, if we're still in a situation like this, seeing if people's standards lower. Because the other fact of the matter is, like, where we are right now is not only unprecedented for the country and for all of us in general. I think if you're younger, if you're in your 80s or 90s, maybe you lived through the Depression, maybe you kind of remember this, but we're in a time and a place where none of us have really experienced this before. And then you add the fact that people are pretty isolated anyway and attached to online stuff, and everyone's into their phones, and which is kind of an issue in general, I think. And what you want is comfort, and a lot of times physical comforts. You need a hug. There is something that comes. There is an exchange of energy that comes when you give someone a hug, be it platonic or romantic. It doesn't always have to be sexual. And I think sometimes we need that reassurance. Sometimes you need somebody to rub your back a little bit and be like, it's going to be cool, especially when times are tough and no one knows what's happening and things are up in the air. What about you? What are you doing? Are you online?
Well, I was gonna say we all need that little pat on the butt every once in a while.
I mean, whatever. Yeah. Good game.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point, which is what I've been going through is I don't trust anybody, man. Like I'm taking precautions. Like I'm staying home. I'm not going out. When I do go out to exercise, to run, like I make sure I'm far away from people. And if there's a lot of people where I'm at, I leave and I go somewhere else to go run or go do something. And you brought up that point, like, hey, I don't know what you've been doing. I don't know where you've been at. I don't know if you're doing this, and that. And that's the same thing with me. It's like, well, are you taking as much precaution as I am in order to do this? Because, I know I'm good because I'm stuck here in my apartment all day, but like, are you? So
right.
It's a weird thing, but it does get to a point where you're like, you know what? I'm gonna risk it, or I can see it getting to that point.
I mean, and I think that's
males,
a real thing.
For guys.
I think that's being really honest. That's and I think for women too. I think men assume that women don't have the same like sexual urges, and I think it's generally assumed that women have more control over their physical self, and I think it's assumed and it's kind of required that women be the ones in control of that. But alternately, women, I think, sociologically are programmed to, you want a man to like reassure you. A lot of sociological programming, but also just like physical programming that comes with like having somebody to look. When you look for a partner, it's someone who's strong and is a caretaker. And, part of that comes with stuff is up in the air. You want to be able to turn to someone and be like, hey, it's not okay. I want to just like cuddle up and feel secure for a second. I mean, I think if you've been talking to somebody for a little while, or maybe you've been on 1 or 2 dates, or you have a rapport already and you kind of have established something, it's easier to carry it on. But I think starting something right now, it could go one way or the other. I'd like to think that maybe it's cool. Maybe it'll encourage people to really get to know each other and, dig deeper than like physicality and like surface level stuff, and have conversations. And then I think from like a spiritual, like mental health perspective, people are a little more open right now because everyone is vulnerable. So everyone is kind of like, what the fuck is going on? And we don't really know. And I think because of that, it leaves you more vulnerable and you might be more willing to be open, right? And hopefully that would lead to more depth in a relationship and some understanding. But the flip side of that is a thing called trauma bonding, which is also a thing, which I probably, I'm not like a mental health professional, but I'm somebody who I'm pretty outspoken about taking care of your mental health and dealing with depression, which I have, and anxiety. And the thing with trauma bonding is you find somebody who is akin to you or who is completely opposite of you. And a lot of that is based upon whatever trauma you guys are both experiencing at the same time, right? Like right now, or trauma you bring with you, right? So you find somebody that you're comfortable with because you carry that trauma. And that's something to kind of like, I think maybe look out for, because, obviously in times of strife, it's easy to turn to something that feels comforting and stuff, but maybe in regular times, that wouldn't necessarily be the person that you would turn to.
Speaking of that, being with a person during these times, from what you've heard from your friends, like, are they even seeing their like boyfriends or significant others, or even this is affecting those sort of like relationships?
Man, most of my friends who are like most of my friends are coupled up in married partners, long-term, even shorter term. I think a lot of the people, it kind of rushed things. I think a lot of people maybe been dating people casually, made a decision to like stick it out with them. And they've been kind of going back and forth between apartments, or they're staying in one apartment. That's risky business to me. That's like, you're rushing a relationship at that point when you're like living together. I also know that I've been seeing and hearing feedback from people who are already together and live together, and there's a lot of pressure there. You know, there's a lot of relationships that might not make it out of this, depending on the length of time we are.
A lot of, might get a lot of breakups, a lot of divorces during this time.
I mean, there's numbers coming out of China that verify that and validate that.
Jeez.
For sure.
And you know, it goes both ways. Mostly, when women are in a committed relationship, they're committed. You know, is a weird thought that I had the other day too, talking with a friend of mine, as we're making a joke, like, what are all these guys doing? That they're inside with, you know, their significant other, but they have like a mistress or a side chick, and they're with their significant other all the time, and they're like, hey, why do you keep going to the bathroom? Oh, you know, for 5 minutes at a time.
Right.
We were just thinking like, oh man,
I'm taking a lot of walks. You have to go get gas again.
You know, and it's like, oh, that's a tough one to balance if you're that type of guy.
I mean, yeah, that's only going to last so long. There's got to be a threshold for that, right? Like, and I'm curious to see where that is and how long. And then you add monetary stress to things. So relationships in general, you know, that's one of the main reasons for divorce is like monetary issues. So,
well, I think people are saving money by not going out, right?
Are people making money though? Because there's a lot of people that are not making money.
That's a good point. Yeah. People,
you know, and I think you're saving money by not going out, but you know, if you're in a couple and neither one of you are working right now, or you're both, you know, your fields are up in the air, I think the reality of the fact that this is really going to change the way we operate and interact with people, but also with the world in general on the back end of this is going to be really interesting.
So, you know, key question, because our, you know, demographics on this channel at least is like 90% males. So, trying to change that.
Look at that. There is, I have ideas about this. That's actually one of the things I've been kind of like pondering is I have some ideas about like fighting and making it more accessible to women, because women like watching boxing.
Do they really?
Just don't feel welcomed, and they don't feel like they're represented properly. And there's certain archetypes that are kind of like pushed, and narratives that are pushed, and I think they don't always represent the audience that could be there and could be available for fighting.
That's a interesting point. You know, I would think like the big thing is it's just not marketed well overall, as like MMA is. You know, the women over there are marketed well, and they're pushed. You know, they throw the dollars behind them. In that sport compared to boxing.
Yeah. Anyway, so our audience is male. What we were going to ask? What we're going to
get to? You know, their natural question is going to be, "What's your Instagram?" Obviously, but you know, my thing was
it's Lil Bear Lawson. Please feel free. I do not get as many DM slides as you would think.
Well, I was going to say, are your DMs popping right now with all this free time?
No.
Okay.
No, not really.
Why not?
Really.
You're just not responding, or?
No, I mean, I'll respond to almost anything that's not a dick pic, basically. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? Yeah. I've definitely gotten those, and dudes, it's unnecessary. Just don't do it. It's unnecessary.
So, you know, the Bumble's not working out then, right now, or did you reactivate it? Because I know you said you wanted to give Bumble advice a few weeks back.
I wanted Bumble. Did I say that?
Yeah, you said a few weeks back you wanted to give guys Bumble advice on their profile.
Oh, no, this was the idea. And okay, so here's the thing. You are a guy and you are on Bumble. Firstly, Bumble is marketed as like being for women. I actually think it's better for men than it is for women. And this is why. It's been cleverly marketed as like a feminist kind of thing because women have to make the first move, which once you make the first move, the conversation is started. So the conversation can go the same way as it does on Tinder, on Hinge, on Raya, on any of those other ones. It's the same, right? So it's basically the same, but I think it's better for men because you know the woman's interested. So it opens a door for you that so maybe there's a little hesitation there from you or something. If you've ever, then you know the woman's interested. So I actually think Bumble is probably better for men almost than it is for women, because you already know she's interested because she has to strike up the conversation. No, this is what I was thinking. If you are on Bumble and it is not or any of the dating apps, and I have free time right now, so let's go, and you're not getting a lot of action or play, allow me to help you redo your profile, because
there you go. We're gonna put an advert out for everybody.
This could be a paid service. You can give me $5.
Yeah, Holly will charge you $7.99.
It's $5. $5. You can give me $5 and I will help you pick your photos. I will teach you how to take better photos if you do not have one. I will help you write a bio, because you should have a bio in there. It shouldn't just be a photo. And I can coach you so that it is the representative of the best version of yourself, or at least a reasonable version. Because if you are not getting play, because everyone's on dating apps, so if you're not getting play, it's because you're not presenting yourself in a way that is easy for somebody that would be normally be interested in you to like see you and be like, yeah, that's my guy. And I truly, I mean, I like to like act like I'm not, and I'm like a smart mouth and stuff, but I'm truly a romantic at heart. So I'd like to think that there's somebody for everyone, or maybe a few people for everyone, and you have to go through a few relationships to learn before you find the one, right? But I see a lot of guys on these apps, and it's like the photos are from 1997 or something. They're like all pixelated, and I'm just like, dude, it's 2020. You gotta have a real photo. Like, what is going on? Or if your first photo is you and a group of guys, and I know men say this with women too, like, don't put you and your 4 friends, because there's a possibility that I think one of your 4 friends is hotter than you, and then if I look at the other photos, I'm like, that's not the guy. Number 1. Number 2, all your photos can't be selfies, because if all your photos are selfies, it tells me that you don't have any friends and you've never done anything. So like, that's weird. And then also, don't make your first photo like the quirky, funny, I'm in a jester cap and it's funny, and like I'm at, I don't know, what is Burning Man, and I'm in a fucking goggles and a steampunk outfit. Like, save that for like later down, so that just have a nice photo of yourself where you look like acceptable. And also, don't put pictures of with your kids.
Why not? Okay. A lot of people,
say you have children.
Dads out there. Why is that?
No, because there's a lot of single women, and there's a lot of, like, I'm single, I don't have kids. You having kids is not an issue. I like kids. But there's a lot of men that put pictures, and they only put pictures with their children, and that's weird. Like, there's something about kids, but the fact that you have your kid in every single photo tells me that maybe you don't have time to date. Like, maybe, excuse me, maybe that's like, like, there's something about focusing on that. Personally, I just don't like the idea of you like putting your kid on blast on a dating app. Like, say you have kids, say you have 2 kids, and then if you get to know someone, be like, this and this and this, and then you can show them photos. I just think it's kind of weird. There's something about it, and I've discussed it with a lot of women, and I feel like we all kind of feel the same way about that.
Really? So that's from all your girlfriends, they've shared that same, like...
It's pretty universal. Like, those things I just said are pretty universal, like, standard things, you know?
Write all that down. She surveyed it with a group of women.
And here's my personal one, because this is me, and I'm Canadian and super left-leaning, but like, if you say that your politics are moderate, that tells me that your politics are probably conservative, but you don't want to say conservative. So that's a no.
That's a no.
That's for
for
me, that's a no, just because that I don't do that. But if you lean one way or the other, go one way or the other, because I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people that are conservative.
What if he's a really, really good-looking guy who's like successful?
What does that have to do with anything?
And he
that's
has
all I did.
But he has that moderate thing on there. But he's really good looking, really successful, has his shit together.
Well, So that's not like a deal breaker for me, but I'm going to investigate and see if like you tend to be like, a lot of people are kind of just, they say moderate because they're indifferent, and that's one thing. But if you say moderate, but truly you're like a little more conservative, you just feel like maybe you live in LA and people will not be open to that. That's the thing. Yeah.
So
I mean, I got the whole thing. Whatever.
Yeah.
I have a question. Give me more questions about dating apps.
Well, no, yeah. The other thing is like, what are some like tail signs from you, like when you're going through this stuff, that shoot off red flags as, oh, this guy's douchey? Like, how do you not come off douchey?
Again, for $5, I will make you the funniest, most charming motherfucker in the world, and I will get you a bunch of women lined up. Douchey. Let's see.
What are like the top red flags where you look at it and like, this guy's douchey?
If all of the pictures of you are in like club party situations and you're drinking, maybe there's women that live that lifestyle, so that's more attractive to them. But that's one thing. Douchey. Oh, the pictures with the tigers. I know Tiger King is like real popular right now, but those are kind of weird. I feel like there's like certain archetypal photos that people are using, and it's like one photo with a sedated animal, one photo of them doing something wild like skydiving or something, one with a group of friends, just like, hey, I have friends, and then one of them doing their hobby or whatever. I don't know. I think that I read what you say too, so that's just me. I'm also nerdy and like good grammar, and those are things that are important to me. So if you spell things incorrectly, I'm gonna roll my eyes. The height thing, I think, is a thing that men feel a little weird about, but like, just be honest about that. Don't say you're 5'9" if you're 5'7". I'm gonna show up and be 5'9" and be like, you're not 5'9". That's happened, by the way. And which is not an issue, but I feel some kind of way about the fact that you lied about something that was apparent, and then I'm not going to trust you, because if you're going to lie to me about something that I'm going to be able to see, what else are you going to lie to me about?
How much shorter was he than what he said?
I mean, he said he was 5'9", and I'm 5'9", and albeit I'm on like the tall end of the spectrum, right? So, but I know I'm 5'9", so I'm 5'9", and I showed up and I was at least a couple inches taller than him, at least.
So he's probably.
And I was not in heels. I was in sneakers, and nope.
Probably had a big heart, Holly. He probably had a big heart.
He was also already drunk by the time I got there.
That's a big no-no, right? Don't show up drunk.
Probably, you would think. Maybe if you guys have a conversation, she explains that she's into partying, that would be acceptable. For me, it was like we met at 6:30 or something, and he had been at a happy hour and was already intoxicated. That's
sounds like a good time.
For me. Yeah, it was funny. I mean, I have all kinds of those though.
So during this time, say you match up with somebody, and like they've talked about like virtual dates. I think that's kind of weird. Like the virtual dates. Like, what do you think about it? Like the video chat, I think that's more like normal. Like, like, hey, what's your number? I'll give you a call, a video chat. But like the video dates where like they have like a little dinner and like a glass of wine, and I'm just, it seems so weird to me.
I mean, what else are you gonna do? I kind of like the idea of watching a movie at the same time, so you can talk shit to each other while you're watching the movie about the movie. Maybe that's cool. I feel like a lot of people are doing like what we're doing right now in general in their life about all kinds of topics, not just romantically. And it's kind of the human interaction that people are looking for. I think there's ways to get creative with it that probably is fun, but at a certain point, it's not going to replace physical presence. So at a certain point, you're going to want to see someone and, what have you. And it's interesting. I'm curious to see how long people are able to like hold out for. And
it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, where you been, who you've been, like how, you've been taking.
Like if you were to meet someone today and she seems cool and maybe you talk The other thing though is that I think is interesting in this time is that I think it can encourage really good, deep conversation. You can actually get to know someone. You can spend some time really having conversations with and asking questions and what have you. And most people have more time than they normally would to do such. But it also is going to expedite the feeling of closeness with people, right? So when you meet someone generally and you're dating, you see them once or twice a week, and like kind of that time for whatever, there's no set thing, but it progresses in a certain way. And I think right now it's really easy to, same thing with long distance relationships, like it's really easy to feel like you know someone completely, and then you have this false sense of closeness, especially if there's a little bit of what I was talking about before, which is trauma bonding, which y'all have time now. You can Google that, look it up. It's a thing. And then obviously when you meet someone who's interested in you, that is, your brain releases certain endorphins, and it's a feel good thing, right? And you were saying, you kind of had a bit of a day today and weren't feeling great. And we all have that, right? So we all have these days you wake up and you're like, this is not it. And you look around at the world and what have you. And so if you have someone that's kind of like pinging on those endorphins for you, it's going to be really easy to look past certain things, I think, and really gravitate towards them really quickly, because it's one of the things that maybe is solid and is bringing you some solace and some comfort in this weird time that we're in.
Yeah, and the other thing, I would imagine that it's going to be hard for a lot of people because they're going to feel like really, really lonely, because they're not going to want to, even though they're talking to people, on the phone or with anybody that they've been seeing or have just met, knowing that there's that barrier there where they can't really see them. I would imagine it can be where people are going to feel really, really lonely.
Yeah, and that more than that, coupled with economic anxiety and, the trauma that comes with, if someone who gets sick, or heaven forbid, someone who passes away from this disease, the weight that comes with that. I think that it can be easy to kind of attach these deeper emotions to these relationships that you formed or these friendships that you formed, because you have all of this other stuff. So I think it's probably good just to be aware of that. But the flip side is we're all going through it, right? So we're all in this. And I keep having this conversation because I think I keep looking for not silver linings, because I think I'm a pessimist, but I keep looking for something, because I'm a doer. I'm a person who, I'm not an optimist. I don't expect the best out of people. I generally look for the worst. I think a lot of that comes from how I grew up in my childhood and stuff. And I keep looking for ways to make a difference and make change. So I found things that I can do to help strangers and to create community. And I think that's going to be the important thing, is not only in dating, but also finding ways to really strengthen, your familial bonds and your tribe, or your community, is really finding ways to step up and make that happen. I think that for me, the more I am of service to others, the better I feel about myself. And the better I feel about myself, the better I'm able to show up in romantic relationships. So if you can show up in ways that help the people around you that you care about or you love, or even just strangers in the smallest of ways, I think that will bring you some satisfaction and some of those endorphins that you would normally get from a romantic relationship. And then the more secure you are with that, also the better version of yourself you're putting forth. So I think it's a twofold thing, right? You're making yourself feel better, but also because you feel better, the version of you that's facing outwards is going to be reflective of positivity and the things that maybe you want to put out there that you would want to attract in a partner. Because they say you attract who you are, right?
No, that's true.
Sorry, that was some real self-help, guru shit right there. I'm sorry.
You got to stay, positive and productive during this time, because I could see with all this free time that people have, it goes back to that quote, idle hands is the devil's workshop. I could see, people
Mm.
going crazy and they're hearing the news, even though it's reality, it's what's going on. It's negative, but it's reality. It's what it is. You can't hide from reality. This is what's happening, and I could see that leading to like, oh man, like what the heck is going on, and all that. So I think it's important, like during this time, to be productive, to keep your mind active, so that if you're in a funk, it pushes you through, because you're productive or you're working on yourself. You're going to come out of this a lot better, and that's the stance ever since this happened. That's how I have looked at it. I didn't look at it as like, oh man, like what the heck am I going to do? I looked at it like, oh my God, I finally have time to catch up on everything that I've been putting off or that I should have been doing, so I look at it that way. But I don't know. I like, for instance, I'll give you an example, because I always seem to see things a little bit differently than people. Like, I remember one time I totaled my car, and everybody's like, and it was a time where I was like kind of broke, and everyone's like, what are you gonna do, man? And I'm like, what do you mean, what am I gonna do? I'm getting a new car. Like, I get a new car. Like, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. Like, like I pay my deductible and I get a new car. And people are like, dude, weird. You just totaled your car. And I'm like, it's just a car, man. Like I get another one, So I think it's important, like perspective. If you turn a negative into a positive, or at least look at it where it's like, okay, well, what's the good that can come out of this time? And you really sit down and think about it. I think you can use this hard time to come out productive and a better person, or you're going to come out of it as an alcoholic, because everybody is drinking right now.
Everyone is drinking. I mean, and everyone asks me, because I'm a trainer and, like I'm within the wellness world, which is a whole other topic, but what I think of that. And I think right now, because it's been a couple weeks for most people, whatever you need to do to kind of like make yourself feel okay for right now is good. But at a certain point, you're going to have to reckon with the fact that this might be reality for a while. And I know from personal experience that the longer you kind of put off dealing with the facts of things, the harder things are going to be on the back end, right? So there's ways to approach it, like you're saying, that will make it more positive. And obviously this is tough for everyone. Like, production has shut down, and I work mostly with people within the entertainment industry. And so we're none of us are working, right? And we're a gig-based culture. So like, what does that do to us? Like income, all of those things. But the flip side is I'm able to create content that I never have time to do and truly don't really like to do. So I personally am being forced to be outside of my comfort zone and do things that, same thing as you. Like I have projects that I wanted to work on. I'm working on, my niece is 14 and she is one of the best basketball players in the country. She's badass. And I never get to spend time with her because I'm working and training, and she's going to school full time and training, and she plays on 2 traveling teams, and she's, I never get to see her. So I'm getting this time with her, which is cool. And then we've been working on some cooking stuff. So I'm trying to teach kids how to cook healthy-ish stuff, which is cool for me. And I think that the more things like that people can find to put into themselves, but also if you meet someone, you like them, and they, stimulate you mentally, read the same book at the same time, and then do a 2-person book club. You have time, you can read that every week. You can watch the same movies and discuss that. You can talk about ways to help your community, ways to rebuild. There are a million things. And again, I'm a doer. This is who I am. Like, I'm not a person who likes to talk about what I do or what I do in the community, but there's a million ways to help people, and there's a million ways to like make change in the world. And right now we are clearly seeing that shit needs to change. So regardless of where you fall on the spectrum of politics or what have you, there's ways for you to do things that will help you and your people and your tribe. And then it kind of like radiates out, right? And then you help your community, and then ultimately, hopefully that would help the country, right? Just small things. I think I found that the smaller there's little things that will make a difference in somebody's life that you know, you don't really know. And I think that can happen when you're getting to know someone too, you know, just I think if you're vulnerable and you're open and you're able to really like allow yourself to expose yourself to someone, you can get to know them in a greater degree than you normally would, right? Because there's not the facade of like bravado and showing up and showing off and like whatever. It's just one person having a conversation, and could be good. I mean, I'm hoping I get to like go to weddings of people that met during this time, right? Like that's what my hope is out of this.
Or
and then we come out of
divorce
this.
parties.
That's for sure happening. But alternately, that can open up other options.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I always wondered this, Holly, and it just came to me too because you were a fighter, and I find it the most interesting thing with female fighters. How is it dating as a female fighter when you were active? Like, was it hard? Like, was it hard meeting men? Were you too intimidating? Like, how is it dating a female fighter?
Well, I don't know because I don't date women, but
well, I meant,
about that.
Yeah, but I meant like, you know, the men that you went out with. When you were an active fighter.
Yeah, which is like a whole other thing because I really wanted to fight again this year. That was one of my things, and this has been derailed, and I feel some kind of way about that. I am told that I am intimidating. I refuse to believe this. But I think sometimes it could be a little tough. I tend to gravitate towards a certain type of man that is secure. I tend to date like quiet alpha men, so they're generally like very successful, and then they don't need to be showy. So then me being in the limelight or in public or fighting is never a thing to them. It's always, it's cool, right? I think the only reason you, as a man, you would feel weird about dating a female fighter is if you are insecure in some way about your place in the world or like your manhood in some, and by manhood I just mean like your being in some way, shape, or form. Also, I'm not like physically aggressive. I'm a loud mouth, but I'm not even a loud mouth. I'm a smart mouth, but I'm not loud and aggressive. So I don't think that's ever really been an issue for me. But I definitely, I don't really tell people anymore at first. Because I found that it like, there's certain assumptions. And then the other thing is when people can just like find a bunch of stuff about you online, it's sometimes I kind of just, you don't get my last name at first, and I'm not going to tell you what I do. I'm going to tell you to do something like, because I don't want to have to explain that right away. And I don't want that to be the basis of something. Right. I think it could be tough. I think there's a lot of assumptions about and kind of maybe misconceptions in certain ways about female fighters.
Is it hard meeting people?
I don't know. Is it hard for anyone? I say it's hard for me, but my friends all swear that it's just because I'm oblivious.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you know, because the life of the fighter is a very lonely life, you know, because you're very busy. You got your training camps, you got, you know, your media stuff, and then, you know, your fight weeks and all that. So, you know, how does that like factor in, or did it factor in at all when you were dating somebody during that time?
Yeah, it could, but when I was like really active professionally, most of the time I was in a relationship kind of on and off, and then, and so that was just there. Yeah, it can be. It definitely can be. I mean, boxing it's a solitary thing, right? It's running and it's that, but hopefully people find ways to like have their own space, but you also don't want to be distracted, right? So the other thing is like, as a fighter, you don't want to be distracted with thinking about a new relationship while you're getting ready for a fight. That could definitely be not great for you and your focus, depending on how like dialed in you are. I think women by nature, and I mean, scientifically, this is proven actually. So women multitask better than men though. So you're used to juggling a bunch of things and having to figure out what's primary and what's most important and deal with that. I think women do that. And that's biologically, that's because women, had to give birth and rear children while performing other tasks. And men generally were providing and hunting, gathering, whatever. So women tend to multitask, but I think most female fighters know how to like turn off the fighter side and then just let the rest of you exist.
Okay, because yeah, that's the other thing. I would think like a lot of people would be wondering is like when you're dating somebody, like, are you the alpha in the relationship or like the aggressive one in the relationship?
I mean, I think that is completely a personal person to person, fighter to fighter. I think you see some women out there and that for sure they are the alpha in the relationship. But I think that's a person to person thing. For me, I don't work well with, I can't have a dude that I'm going to run all over. I'm not going to respect you. And then that's not the thing. So for me, it doesn't work. But again, I also don't like a dude that I'm going to like butt heads with aggressively either.
They say for the male boxers, a lot of them, that old school thought of like no sex during camp to save off testosterone. Necessarily, does that apply to women too? Like, were you of that?
No, it's supposed to be the opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, I did just because I'm like, my trainer's old school and that's what we do. But biologically, again, women, there's something about elevated testosterone when you do have sexual activity. So for women, it can be beneficial as opposed to for men, right? Obviously, you probably don't want to be doing it the day before a fight or for me sparring or whatever, but like you don't want to be drained, but I think it doesn't have as many adverse effects for women.
You felt it helps women?
Well, you have an elevated testosterone level for a certain amount of time post that. And so that's why after sex, women will like get up and go do things and men are like asleep.
Is that why?
It's one of the reasons. Yeah.
Really?
So women haven't, yeah.
I never knew that, but I always found that kind of odd. Yeah. That like, why do you have so much energy right now? Like,
that's a thing.
Wow.
There's a whole biological hardwiring there.
I did not know that. Oh, wow. That's interesting. Okay. Well, then I could see as to, why it would work on that side. But a lot of people feel it's not even a thing. I've spoken to a lot of fighters who are like, that's not true,
No, and they might not know why, but that's why it's not true.
Yeah. With that too, post a fighter career and dating too, you mentioned you want to avoid them getting intimidated by you because of what you accomplish, and I could see some guys being like, oh, like, dang, like she's done all this, and like, whoa, what have I done, how do you navigate that?
I mean, that might be part of my issue. Like, part of my thing is, I think also when people figure out that I am a boxer and also what I do for a living and the world I live in, I think there's a lot of assumptions about like what I would find attractive or what I look for in a man. And like the truth of the matter is that like my least favorite dude is a meathead. So I don't date like I don't date gym bros. Like I don't date gym bros.
You think a female fighter would like an athletic, super alpha type guy,
It'd be cool if you want to go to the gym with me sometimes and we go and do our separate workouts. Totally cool. I love that. If you have a thing that you're into, if you play baseball and you play on a rec team, dope. I'm going to come to your games. Like, I love that. If you don't do any of those things, also cool. Like for me, I like cerebral, intelligent artists. So that's like my thing. And that's what I care about predominantly. So it's like, the physicality is secondary. And the truth of the matter is like, I don't want to date some gym bro who's just like I mean, I also have issues with the whole like wellness, fitness industry in general. I don't like the dynamic of it and stuff. So that kind of archetype doesn't work for me. I think that's one thing. I think that is probably like the main thing that the misconception from men is like, that's what I'd be interested in, because it's not at all. And then, I don't know, it's tough. It's like I think that's probably the main thing for me. Right. I don't think you've met me in person. Like, I'm pretty open. I'm like, I get along with most people. I talk a lot of shit, but like, I like to talk about sports and books and art and politics. And, you know, I make it a point to be, not make it a point, like I'm pretty well read. I read a lot more. I don't watch a ton of television, so I read a lot. So I tend to like lean towards cerebral as opposed to physical.
Well, that's going to be refreshing for like a lot of people thinking that, because you would think as a normal like Joe Schmo guy, a female fighter would probably want to date like a male fighter because they just can relate to each other a lot more. No, you're like, no. Why not?
No,
Do female fighters in general date male fighters a lot? I've seen a lot of, well, at least on the MMA side, a lot of female fighters dating male MMA fighters.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of that is proximity, right? So a lot of that is like you're in the gym with people every day, and that's what you basically have access to and what you're around, and there's a comfortability there. And, you know, obviously when you get to know someone, it's easier to kind of fall into a relationship with them. Again, it's the thing about like training camp and stuff, right? Like if your pool is this big, it's easy to find somebody in that pool. And I think that often that's the thing. I think I'm also, personally, I'm a bit of an anomaly within that world. So I think I fall less into the, like that. I do very well speaking for myself. I am not sure that I do very well speaking for all women fighters.
You know what I just thought of? Going back to the whole this whole coronavirus thing is there is a variable, I guess, in seeing people would be like the friends with benefits category. How do you approach that? Because even with that, I guess I'm
how do I approach that in general?
Well, I'm more lenient to wanting to be open to seeing them, because there is a level of comfortability there.
Right.
They tell me something, I do trust them because there's a level of, you know.
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably the way to go.
Is that the way to go right now? Too bad I don't have any of those. Shoot.
I mean, I think it also depends on what you're looking for. If you just want to get laid, then it's probably best that you sleep with someone that you already have had some form of a relationship with, and you can kind of vouch for where they've been and how they are, and how, you know, their space in the world, like how they've approached the quarantine. I definitely have been chatting with a couple guys, and a couple of them have been acting like they're just out doing shit. One of them said he was at a bar maybe like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks. Really? So my birthday was March 18th, and he said his birthday was the day before mine. And on my birthday, I was like locked down, and it was pretty weird. It was a really weird birthday for me, right? But he said that his birthday was the day before mine, and he had gone to work and then was at a bar. And it immediately was like a turnoff for me, because I was like, oh, look at you, like just out there doing whatever.
Mm.
I'm kind of looking at you judgingly, you know, and that's just me personally. I think there's a lot of people who are not taking this as seriously as they probably should. Friends with benefits, probably a good thing right now.
That's the way to go, Holly.
Yeah, there you go. There's the tagline.
Yeah,
friends with benefits
is the way to go right now during this time. So, you guys watch.
Holly, the Bumble expert.
Yeah, Holly, the love and relationship expert. It says,
word though, I have time. If you have love and relationship questions, I am on Twitter. I am on Instagram. I have a Facebook, but don't really use it. They're all Lil Bear Lawson. Please ask me questions. Like, I would love to be able to find a way to be a matchmaker of sorts. So men and women perhaps approach, and I will try to match y'all up.
We'll try to match you online via Zoom.
I I mean, we'll turn this off, and then you can tell me what you're looking for. I'll try to hook you up. I try to do that. I try to be good.
Have to do that. I might have to do that. Cool. Holly, let's check back in with each other
in a month and see.
Maybe I don't know, maybe 2 weeks time. Because we've already been locked down here in LA. What, for 3 weeks?
Yeah. Is it 3?
I think 3 weeks. Yeah, I think 3 weeks. Yeah.
What are we gonna do?
What can you do?
I mean, it is.
Sometimes you're just gonna have to risk it. When it comes to that, gonna have to risk it.
I don't want to do that.
You're gonna have to wait it out.
I think that I had the coronavirus in January. And so I am less hesitant than most people probably to do that. And I still am like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting that you still feel like that, even though you think you probably.
Yeah, and I was fine, but I'm like, my big thing is that I would never want to be a carrier. Like, I would never want to pass it along to somebody and unknowingly do that. That would be terrible for me. I would feel awful.
Yeah, and they haven't really been very clear on, like, if you had it, can you still give it to somebody? Even though I think, just in general, if you get like a virus and it passes through, it's more.
Well, you produce antibodies, so generally it won't you won't be a carrier either. Yeah, they don't know. That's the thing about this. They don't know yet. They don't know,
it's a new thing,
Yeah.
But following the how it is with the flu and the cold and with other virus things, that should be, that's like the theory that, if you did have a carrier, that they wouldn't pass it along. So, hey, I could set you up with Otto Vollen. He had it. There you go.
You're gonna make me say something on camera.
No, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to say anything. I was just messing around, but cool. Let's check back in with each other.
Yes.
No. All right. So we're gonna end this video. Holly, thank you so much. Go ahead and plug yourself.
I'm on Twitter and Instagram, Lil Bear Lawson, LILBEARLAWS. And hit me up. I will help you with your Bumble profiles. It actually would bring me satisfaction if I can help you guys out.
There you go.
It'll be a good project. Let me help you.
Yo, you. Yes, you. Thank you so much for watching this video. And make sure to subscribe for more videos of your favorite fighters over here on Fight Up TV. And give us a follow online as well at Fight Up TV on Twitter and on Instagram. We appreciate it, guys.